These are the lovely pure streams of the Nile, which waters the plain and lands of Egypt, fed by the white melting snow instead of rain from heaven. Proteus was king of this land when he was alive, living on the island of Pharos and lord of Egypt, and he married one of the daughters of the sea, Psamathe, after she left Aeacus's bed. She bore 2 children in his palace here, a son, Theoclymenos, and a noble daughter, her mother's pride, called Ido in her infancy. But when she came to youth, the season of marriage, she was called Theone, for she knew whatever the gods designed, both present and to come, having received these honors from her grandfather, Nereus. My own fatherland, Sparta, is not without fame, and my father is Tyndareus. But there is indeed a story that Zeus flew to my mother, Leda, taking the form of a bird, a swan, which accomplished the deceitful union, fleeing the pursuit of an eagle, if this story is true. My name is Helen. I will tell the evils I have suffered. For the sake of beauty, 3 goddesses came to a deep valley on the Mount Ida, to Paris, Hera and Cypris, and the virgin daughter of Zeus, wishing to have the judgment of their loveliness decided. Cypris offered my beauty, if misfortune is beautiful, for Paris to marry, and so she won. Paris, the shepherd of Ida, left his ox stalls and came to Sparta to have me in marriage. But Hera, indignant at not defeating the goddesses, made an airy nothing of my marriage to Paris. She gave to the son of King Priam, not me, but an image, alive and breathing, that she fashioned out of the sky and made to look like me. And he thinks he has me, an idle fancy, for he doesn't have me. And in turn, the plans of Zeus added further troubles to these, for he brought a war upon the land of the Hellenes and the unhappy Phrygians, so that he might lighten Mother Earth of her crowded mass of mortals and bring fame to the bravest man of Hellas. So I was set up as the Hellenes' spear prize, to test the courage of the Trojans, or rather not me, but my name. Hermes caught me up in the folds of the air and hid me in a cloud, for Zeus was not neglectful of me, and he set me down here in the house of Proteus, having selected the most moderate of all mankind, so that I might save my bed unadulterated for Menelaos. And so I am here, while my wretched husband has gathered an army and gone over to the towers of Ilion to hunt down and recover me. And many lives have been lost for my sake by the streams of Scamandros. And I, who have endured all this, am accursed, and here have in appearance betrayed my husband and brought a great war to the Hellenes. Why then am I still alive? I heard the utterance of the god Hermes declare that I would yet live in the glorious country of Sparta with my husband. For Hermes knew I never went to Ilion, so that I would not go to bed with another man. Well, as long as Proteus saw this light of the sun, I was safe from marriage. But now that he is hidden in the dark earth, the dead man's son hunts after a marriage with me. But I, honoring my husband of long ago, am throwing myself down as a suppliant before this tomb of Proteus, for him to keep my bed safe for my husband, so that if I bear a name infamous throughout Hellas, at least my body may not incur disgrace here.
That was the opening speech from Euripides' play, The Helen. I'm Joel Christensen. I'm from Brandeis University, and together with the Kosmos Society, the Center for Hellenic Studies, and Paulo Mahoney, we're bringing people together during this period of our own solitude to read and think about ancient Greek tragedy. This play was originally performed in a period different from ours, but with some similarities of its own. It was produced in 412 BCE, after the Athenians had spent years dealing with the crisis of the failure of the Sicilian expedition, a part of the Peloponnesian War against the Spartans, when they lost an army of almost 60,000 men. It engages with some really important issues of literature and performance and myth, and it's one of the most challenging and strange plays from the ancient world. One of the things that is interesting about the play is it starts with Helen on the stage. And where she is a place that will surprise most casual viewers of myth. And that's that she is in Egypt 10 years after the beginning of the Trojan War. And the real secret here is that she never went to Troy at all. So this play starts in sort of an alt-fact world of ancient myth. And it engages in some miraculous ways with themes that are important to today. One you already saw in the beginning is this difference between reality and appearances. One of the names I'd like to bring up from that monologue is the prophetess Theone, or Theonoe, who become important later in the play. Her original name is Ado, and that means idea or form. It's about appearances. And this play is all about the difference between what people think is going on and what's actually going on. And it's engaged as well with some other stories you might know. It's deeply thinking about homecoming and the Odyssey and the reunions of people who've been separated for so long. So if you notice in that speech, which Eunice did a great job giving for us, Helen doesn't name herself for almost 1/3 of the introduction, just as Odysseus is not named at the beginning of the Odyssey. And the Odyssey and Echoes only start there. This is a play that engages with a theme of wooing and a bride who's waiting for a long-lost husband, and a return of a husband who's shipwrecked, and testing identities and asking us to think about, how is it that we know who we are? How do we test that other people really are who they say we are? And how do we reunite when we've been separated for a while? Now, before we get to the continuation of this scene, Euripides, who tends to take some pretty broad liberties with myth, isn't alone in putting Helen apart from the blame of the war. The traditional story that Helen went off with Paris was challenged as early as the 6th century BCE by a poet named Stesichorus, who starts off his famous palinode saying, "This story is not true. Helen did not go to Troy." Herodotus repeats the same thing in the mid-5th century BCE, saying people are saying this, but it's not likely at all. And also it's kind of ridiculous that you'd have a giant war over just a woman. What's amazing about this play is that Helen gets to speak for herself and talk about her own experiences. And what we find out is the Helen we thought was at Troy is the eidolon. This word means a little copy. I joke with my students saying that she's the Cylon Helen, riffing on Battlestar Galactica. She's a replacement who's real enough to make people act in the world in a way that sends myriad Achaeans to their dooms. So this is where we start at the beginning of the Helen, in a world in which what's true or not true doesn't matter as much as what people believe to be the truth.
Before we start there, I just want to sort of give a big introduction to the actor that you've just met, which is Eunice Roberts, who is an actor based over here in the UK, and she is also one of the associate directors of Actors from the London Stage, which is a theatre company that's been going for 45 years now. And every one of the actors performing as part of this today is one of the associate directors of that company. And what they do is that we work exclusively in Shakespeare, actually, taking it around American universities, performing, and also running workshops. And I've sort of gathered these people together, and I've worked with Joel in the past as well, and with lots of people at CHS. And I'm really excited about the idea of how we could bring some performance to the discussion that Joel is going to be leading for us here today. We're going to go straight into the next scene. I will be playing the part of Teucer, and taking the part of Helen will be Evelyn Miller. Evie, will you say hello?
Hello.
Great. That's good. The microphone works.
Thank you.
And Evie is from AFTLS, and she's just recently finished a run at the Globe in London. Also worked with the RSC in the last couple of years. And in fact, we toured the States together in Richard III. So we can always slip into that at some point, if time allows. But for now, we'll move into this first scene. Who holds power over this fortified house? The dwelling is worthy of comparison with Plutos, its royal enclosures and towering buildings. Oh, gods. What sight is here? I see the most hateful, deadly likeness of the woman who ruined me and all the Achaeans. May the gods spurn you, so much do you look like Helen. If I were not in a foreign land, you would have died by this well-aimed arrow as a reward for your likeness to the daughter of Zeus.
What is it, poor man? Who are you that you have turned away from me and loathe me for the misfortunes of that one?
I was wrong. I gave way to my anger more than I should, for all Hellas hates that daughter of Zeus. Forgive me for what I said, lady.
Who are you? Where have you come from to visit this land?
I am one of those wretched Achaeans, lady.
Then it is no wonder that you loathe Helen. But who are you and where do you come from? Whose son should I call you?
My name is Teucer. My father is Telamon, and Salamis is the land that nurtured me.
Then why are you visiting these lands of the Nile?
I am an exile, driven out of my native land.
You must be unhappy. Who banished you from your fatherland?
My father, Telamon. Could you find anyone more dear to me?
But why? This matter is surely an unfortunate one.
The death of my brother Ajax at Troy was my ruin.
How so? You didn't take his life with your sword, did you?
He threw himself on his own sword and died.
Was he mad? For what balanced man would dare such a thing?
Do you know a certain Achilles, the son of Peleus?
Yes. He came to woo Helen once. So I hear.
When he died, he left a conflict over his armour to his allies.
Well, if he did, what trouble is this to Ajax?
When someone else got the arms, he took his own life.
Then are you ill through his pains?
Yes, because I did not die together with him.
So you went to the famous city of Ilion, stranger?
Yes, and by helping to sack it, I destroyed myself as well.
Has it already been set alight and completely consumed by fire?
So that not even a trace of the walls is evident.
Oh, miserable Helen. Because of you, the Phrygians have been destroyed.
And also the Achaeans. Great evils have been committed.
How long is it since the city was sacked?
Almost 7 years have gone full circle with their harvests.
And how much longer were you waiting at Troy?
For many months, the moon held its course through 10 years.
And did you capture the Spartan woman?
Menelaos caught her by the hair to drag her away.
Did you yourself see the wretched creature? Or do you speak from hearsay?
I saw her with my own eyes, just as I see you, no less.
Consider whether you had some fancy, sent by the gods.
Bring to mind some other topic, not that woman still.
Are you so sure this fancy was reliable?
I saw it with my own eyes, and this mind has sight.
Is Menelaos already at home with his wife?
No, he's neither in Argos nor by the streams of the Eurotas.
Oh my. This is evil news for those whom you speak evil.
He is said to have disappeared with his wife.
Wasn't there the same passage for all the Argives?
Yes, but a tempest scattered them in every direction.
On which surface of the salty ocean?
While they were crossing the Aegean in mid-channel.
And from that time, does no one know of Menelaos' arrival?
No one. But throughout Hellas, he is reported to be dead.
I am wholly lost. Is the daughter of Thestios alive?
You speak of Leda, she's dead and gone indeed.
It wasn't Helen's disgraceful fame that killed her, surely.
Yeah, they say she tied a noose around her noble neck.
Are the sons of Teucer still alive or not?
They are dead and not dead. It's a double story.
Which report is the stronger? I am so unhappy at these evils.
Men say that they are gods in the likeness of stars.
That is good news. But what is the other story?
That they killed themselves because of their sister. But enough of such speeches. I do not need to grieve twice. As to why I came to this royal palace, wanting to see the prophetess Theanoe. You be my patron, so I might obtain an oracle, how I should steer a favourable course to the island of Cyprus, where Apollo has declared I am to dwell, giving it the island name of Salamis, for the sake of that fatherland over there.
The voyage itself will indicate that, stranger. Leave this land and escape, before the son of Proteus, the ruler of this land, catches sight of you. Now he is away with his trusty hounds, tracking his savage quarry to the death, for he kills every stranger from Hellas that he catches. Do not seek to learn his reason, and I will not say, for how could I help you?
Lady, you have spoken well. May the gods grant you a return for your goodness. Although you have a body like Helen's, your heart is not like hers, but very different. May she die miserably and never reach the streams of Euripides. But may you always have good fortune, lady.
After this scene, the play moves into a choral section where Helen continues or moves really into a lament and responsion with the chorus as we wait to see what happens next. Part of the reason she is upset is the sons of Tyndareus are her brothers. And she's trying to collect what's going on and how she will get away from Egypt. And this also engages with the Odyssey, because this is the moment when Menelaos tells the story of being in Egypt and getting a prophecy from Proteus. So at this moment, we have the shipwrecked Menelaos, which is a bit of an innovation. And he comes on stage and then starts to talk about what has just happened to him.
And I'll introduce Richard Neale. So hello, Richard.
Hello.
Richard giving us this first speech for Menelaos, another associate director of AFTLS. Take us away.
Oh, Pelops, who once held that chariot race contest with Oikonomaios over Pisa, if only when you were persuaded to make a banquet for the gods, you'd left your life then, inside the gods, before you ever begot my father, Atreus, to whom were born from his marriage with Aerope, Agamemnon and myself, Menelaos, a famous pair. For I believe that I carried a mighty army, and I say this not in boast, in ships to Troy. No tyrannos commanding any troops by force, but leading the young men of Hellas by voluntary consent. And some of these can be counted no longer alive. Others as having a joyful escape from the sea, bringing home again names thought to be of the dead. But I wander miserably over the swelling waves of the grey ocean ever since I sacked the towers of Ilion. And although I long to come home, I'm not thought worthy by the gods to achieve this. I have sailed to Libya's deserts and all its inhospitable landing places, and whenever I draw near my native land, the blast drives me back again, and no favouring wind has ever entered my sails to let me come home. And now I'm cast upon this shore, a miserable shipwrecked sailor who has lost his friends, and my ship is broken into many pieces against the rocks, but out of its cleverly wrought fastenings, the keel was left, on which I was barely saved by an unexpected chance, and also Helen with me, whom I dragged away from Troy. But I do not know the name of this country and its people, for I was embarrassed to burst into a crowd and make inquiries, and so I concealed these shabby clothes in shame over my misfortune. For whenever a man of high degree is badly off, he falls into an unaccustomed state which is worse than that of one who has long been unfortunate. But poverty is wearing me away, for I have neither food nor clothes around my body. No one can compare what I'm wearing to rags cast out of the ship. The sea snatched away all the robes I once wore, splendid clothes and ornaments. Deep in a cave, I hid the woman who caused all my troubles. And I've come here after compelling those of my friends who survived to guard my wife. I've come alone, seeking help for those friends there, if I may find it somehow after careful search. When I saw this home, surrounded by walls and the majestic gateways of some prosperous man, I came near. The sailors can hope to get something from wealthy homes, but from those who have no livelihood, they could not help us even if they wanted to. Hello? Is there some gatekeeper who might come from the house and announce my troubles within?
Who's at the door? Get away from the house and don't annoy my master by standing at the courtyard gate, or else you'll die because you are a Hellene and they have no business here.
My good woman, you can say these same words in a different tone, for I shall be persuaded, but let go your angry speech.
Go away, stranger. My orders are to let no Hellene come near this house.
Do not push me or thrust me away by force.
You're responsible for not heeding what I say.
Announce to your master inside.
I think someone would be sorry if I announced your words.
I come as a shipwrecked man and guest. Such people are safe from violence.
Well, go to some other house instead of this one.
No, I'm going inside. You listen to me.
Know that you're causing trouble, and soon you'll be thrown out by force.
Alas, where are those glorious armies of mine?
Perhaps you were grand somewhere, but not here.
Oh, Daimon, how we have been unworthily dishonoured.
Why are your eyes wet with tears? To whom are you lamenting?
To my fortunes, which were happy before this.
Well then, why don't you go away and give these tears to your friends?
What is this land? Whose palace is this?
Proteus dwells here. The land is Egypt.
Egypt? Oh, wretched that I have sailed here.
Why do you blame the bright gleam of the Nile?
I do not blame it. I am sighing for my fate.
Many people are doing badly. You're not the only one.
Is the king you name in the house?
This is his tomb. His son rules the land.
And where might he be? Abroad or in the house?
He's not inside. He is most bitterly opposed to the Hellenes.
What cause does he have? I have felt the consequences of it.
Helen, the daughter of Zeus, is in the house.
What do you mean? What mythos did you say? Tell me again.
The daughter of Tyndaris, who once lived in Sparta.
Where did she come from? What is the meaning of this?
She came here from the land of Lacedaemon.
When? Surely I have not been robbed of my wife from the cave.
Before the Achaeans went to Troy, stranger. But get away from the house, for something is happening within by which the royal palace is thrown into confusion. You've not come at the right time, and if my master catches you, death will be your guest guilt. For I am well disposed to Hellenes, for all that I spoke harshly to you, in fear of my master.
So that exchange ends around line 480 in the play, at which point the old woman goes back inside and Menelaos stays on the stage alone, trying to figure out what just happened. Because as far as he knows, Helen's in a cave. And now he's heard she's in this house. And he's being treated quite badly. At this very moment, the chorus engages with him. And then, as they're speaking, Helen herself comes out to visit the tomb.
Here I am, once again coming back to the sanctuary of this tomb, after learning the dear words of Theone, who knows all things truly. She says my husband is alive and sees the light of day. He is roaming here and there on countless voyages, not without practice in wandering. And he shall come here when he finds an end to his suffering. But she left one thing unsaid. If he will come here and be saved, and I refrained from asking that question clearly. I was so glad when she told me he was saved. She said that he was near this land somewhere, cast up, shipwrecked with a few friends. Oh, when will you come? How much I long for your arrival. Who's this? I'm not being ambushed by the plots of Proteus's impious son, am I? Shall I not, like a young racehorse or a worshipper of Bacchus, reach the tomb? There is something wild about the looks of this man who is hunting me down.
You there, the one trying with fearful effort to reach the base of the tomb and the pillars of burnt sacrifice, stay where you are. Why do you flee? I'm amazed and speechless at the sight of your body.
Women, I am being ill-treated. This man is keeping me from the tomb, and he wants to take me and give me to the kings, whose wooing I was seeking to avoid.
I am no thief nor a servant of evil men.
And yet the clothes you are wearing are unsightly enough.
Put fear aside and stop your rapid flight.
I do so, now that I have reached this spot.
Who are you? Whom do I see in you, lady?
But who are you? The same reason prompts us both.
I never saw a closer resemblance.
Oh, God. For the recognizing of friends is a God.
Are you a woman from Hellas or a native of this land?
From Hellas. But I want to learn your story too.
You seem to me very much like Helen, lady.
And you seem to me like Menelaos. I don't know what to say.
Well, you have correctly recognized a most unfortunate man.
Oh, at last you have come to the arms of your wife.
What do you mean by wife? Do not touch my robe.
The one who Tyndareus, my father, gave to you.
Oh, torch-bearing Hecate, send visions that are favourable.
You see in me no spectre of the night, attendant on the queen of phantoms.
As one man, I'm certainly not the husband of two women.
You are the master of what other wife?
The one hidden in the cave, who I'm bringing from Troy.
You have no other wife but me.
Can it be that I'm in my right mind but my sight is failing?
Don't you think that when you look at me, you see your wife?
Your body resembles her, but the real truth robs me of this belief.
Look, what more do you need? Who is more Sophos than you?
You are like her. I will not deny that, at least.
Who then shall teach you, if not your own eyes?
It is there that I am ailing because I have another wife.
I did not go to Troy. That was a phantom.
And who fashions living bodies?
The air, out of which you have a wife that the gods laboured over.
What God's handiwork? You're saying things beyond hope.
Hearers, as a substitute, so that Paris would not have me.
How then could you be here and in Troy at the same time?
The name may be in many places, though not the body.
Now let me go. I've come here with enough pain.
Will you leave me and take that phantom bride away?
Yes, and farewell for your likeness to Helen.
I am ruined. I found you, my husband, but I will not have you.
But the greatness of my troubles over there convinces me you do not.
Ah, me, who was ever more wretched than I am? Those who are most dear to me are leaving me, and I shall never reach the Hellenes or my own country.
Menelaos, I find you, after taking great trouble to look for you, wandering over the whole of this foreign land. I'm sent by the comrades whom you left behind.
And what is it? Surely not being plundered by the foreigners.
It's a miracle. What I say is of less account than what happened.
Well, tell me, for judging by this eagerness, you're certainly bringing something new.
I say that you have suffered countless pains in vain.
You are mourning over old sorrows. What is your message?
Your wife has disappeared, taken up into the folds of the unseen air. She's hidden in heaven. And as she left the hallowed cave, where we were keeping her safe, she said this: "Miserable Phrygians and all the Achaeans, on my account you were dying by the banks of Scamandros through Hera's contrivance, for you thought that Paris had Helen when he didn't. But I, since I have stayed my appointed time and having kept to my destiny, will now depart into the sky, my father. But the unhappy daughter of Tyndareus, guilty in no way, has borne evil rumours without reason." Oh, Welcome, daughter of Leda. You here after all? I was just announcing your departure up to the hidden starry realms, not knowing that you had a winged body. I will not let you muck us like this again. For you gave your fill of ordeals to your husband and his allies in Ilion.
This is the meaning of that. The words of this woman have turned out to be true. Oh, longed for day that has given you to my arms.
After this scene, Menelaos and Helen continue to try to figure out what's actually going on. At this moment, it seems that they understand there's only one Helen. And now that the cloud Helen has dispersed, we have to go to the action of the real couple. And the situation going on here is that Menelaos' life is at danger if they find out that he's come and he's reported to the king. And Helen's still slotted in to be married off. So they face this danger. Theonoe comes out again, and she actually works with the couple. And they eventually plan to have Menelaos' disguise be his beggar's self, and to have Helen play along. Along the way, there are a couple odd moments of threats of violence where Menelaos might die and Helen might go with him. But in the next scene, starting at line 1031, they've come up with a different plan.
Menelaos, as far as the maiden is concerned, we are saved. For the rest, you must contribute your advice and frame a device to bring us to safety.
Then listen. You've been in the house for a long time and are intimate with the king's servants.
What do you mean by that? You were offering hope as if you were really about to do something useful for us both.
Could you persuade somebody in charge of the wagons and horses to give us a chariot?
I might. But how will we escape in our ignorance of the country and the barbarian land?
You're right. It's impossible. Well, what if I were to hide in the house and kill the king with this two-edged sword?
His sister would never be silent or allow you to intend her own brother's death.
Nor indeed is there a ship in which we might be saved, for the sea holds the one we had.
Listen to me, if even a woman can say something wise. Are you willing to be called dead in a word, though you are not dead?
That is a bad omen. But if I profit by it, I'm ready to be called dead in word, though I am not dead.
And truly I would mourn you, as women do, with hair cut short and laments before this impious man.
What soteria does this have for us two? This plan is a little out of date.
I will beg the king of this country for permission to bury you in an empty tomb, as if you had really died at sea.
Suppose he allows it. Then how shall we be saved with no ship when we have buried my body in the empty tomb?
I will urge him to give me a vessel from which I shall have the offerings from your tomb let down into the sea's embrace.
But you've spoken well except for one thing. If he commands you to make an arrangement for a tomb on the dry land, your pretext comes to nothing.
But I will say it is not the custom of Hellas to bury those who have died at sea on the dry land.
You're setting this right too. And I will sail with you and help let down the ritual adornments in the same boat.
You must above all be at hand with your sailors who escaped from the wreck.
I'll be sure that if I have a ship at anchor, they will be posted, man beside man, each with his sword.
You must direct everything. Only let there be winds in our sails to guide us and a speedy ship.
It will be so. The Diomedes will bring my troubles to an end. But from whom will you say that you heard I was dead?
From you. Allege that you were the only one to escape death when you were sailing with the son of Atreus, and that you saw him dead.
It is true that these rags thrown around my body will bear witness to me as to the shipwreck.
They have come at the right time, although then they seemed an ill-timed loss. Perhaps that misery may turn to good fortune.
Should I enter the house with you? Or am I to sit serene here at this tomb?
Stay here. For if he does something harsh to you, this tomb and your sword will protect you. But I will go into the house, cut off my hair, exchange my white robe for a dark one, tear my cheek with nails that make the flesh bloody, for the contest is a great one, and I see two turns of the scale. Either I must die if I am detected in my plot, or else come home and save you as well.
First, before I say anything, thank you for those readings. And they, you know, the play really hinges on the moment that you just read. Afterwards, so I'll summarize it first, they execute the plan. And just to make clear what the plan is Helen is going to tell the very man who wants to marry her that sure, she'll marry him, but first she's got to finish mourning the death of her husband. And the proper way to mourn the death of her husband is to get a nice ship to go to sea to bury him correctly. So Theoclymenos falls for this, right? Which shows how clever Helen is. And when he eventually finds out, it's too late because they're sailing away. And just at the moment when he's trying to figure out if he should go to sea and attack them or not, the brothers of Helen, the Dioscoroi, Castor and Pollux, show up. And they say, whoa, you should give up your anger. And the play ends. And it's sort of classic Euripidean Deus Ex Machina. So that's the end of the play. And it's strange. And we could probably spend a lot of time going in circles around it. But I'd love to go back to the beginning and through it and have a conversation about some of the choices you made and some of the thoughts you had while reading the play. Is everyone good with that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to start, let's start with Eunice, if that's okay. Eunice, yeah. What's it like to be Helen?
It's rather nice, really. Well, only because, I mean, I am not somebody who knows the stories really well, I have to confess. But you have this image of Helen, you know, and that she, well, my impression is that she always sort of got her own way, really, and sort of did things her, you know, what she wanted. Well, and even just reading this little passage, really, I mean, she had, wasn't smooth sailing, was it, really? You know, she didn't always have fair winds in her sails. And I just love this thing of who is she? And which one is which? And I love that. Because even if in the simplest sense, we all choose who we present ourselves with different people, you know, whether it's with family or friends or when you're teaching or something, you know, you're different to different people. And so that's what I found quite interesting in this. You know, she says, and then she goes, ah, ha, 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 ah, ha, ha. I like that.
It's fascinating because the play starts out by saying, Helen is not who you think she is. And then at the end of the play, well, wait a minute, what has she just arranged? Yeah. Evie, when you were preparing and thinking about being Helen, what were some of the thoughts that ran through your head?
I think there's this really fascinating, I suppose in my kind of prior thoughts about the women who were involved in the Trojan War, they're at some remove anyway, you know, they're not on the battlefield. This idea of kind of stories that get reported, you know, hearing the day's action, but the idea that she's not even there, you know, the kind of idea of sitting at home and having not a clue what's happening, but knowing that everyone you love is fighting over an idea of you, an idea of, you know, womanhood or idea of beauty. And it's really fascinating. It's really fascinating.
And I like what Eunice added in there. I mean, Helen's, and what you brought in there, Helen's eidolon, right? Her replacement Helen is sort of an elegant metaphor for the fact that what we engage with in the world is a representation anyway, right? It's separate from who we are, how we see the world, and the doubling of Helen really sort of actualizes that in a way, right? So it makes it a fake Helen real, just as, you know, this idea of what it means to be a woman, right? And what people will do for beauty, right? So let's make it out of the clouds. And I like both of you brought very different voices, I think, to Helen. And do you think that that's connected to your own experiences or view of her, or do you think that she shifts during the play in substantial ways?
Yeah, well, I think. Oh, sorry.
No, I mean, well, I suppose we're quite different. Our ages are quite different, and so what we bring to it with that. And so it can be Helen through time and Helen through ages. You know, she could be represented in different ways, or represent different moments in the play, or how people are seeing her at those moments in the play, or whoever she is in the play.
And who she needs to be seen as, potentially, at any particular moment. I suppose, yeah, the first scene I read, it's crucial that she's not recognised as Helen, whereas in the second scene I read, she's in a battle to be recognised as herself.
Yeah.
Which is a monumental shift of focus and intention, and yeah,
it really is. And you know, and I think part of the difference is context, right? So Eunice, when you were Helen was her own on the stage, right? She had no one to answer to except the idea of an audience, right?
Yeah.
And Evie, your Helen had to be Helen to other people.
Yeah, completely.
And I mean, what I find fascinating from sort of human psychological perspective on this reflection is that it is, I think, as Eunice anticipated, a very real reflection of what each of us do, right? As we navigate who we are in different situations and different contexts. Moving to Menelaos, Richard, I really liked your Menelaos. He seemed, well, I didn't like him as a person, but I liked your representation of him. Can you walk us through some of the character traits you saw for him and some of the choices you made in your voicing of him?
Yeah, I find I find their relationship quite interesting. Mostly, he seems to be full of self-pity, and very much aware of his own brilliance in fighting this war with his brother, and furious that he can't get home. You know, furious that he can't get home when he should rightly be home. Right? He's been good. He's done good stuff, and nobody's letting him go home. But also, there's something quite fascinating that, like, I think when they start in the scene, like there's nothing really about Helen in that first speech for him. He doesn't really talk about Helen. He just talks about his own woes and helping his friends. And then constantly kind of refers to her as his trouble, as all of his bother and his trouble and his worry. And then in that scene that they have together, suddenly seems really excited to have her back when he hasn't really lost anything yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know, when I'm reading it, there feels to be like a little bit of a child choosing the best toy that they want to play with, almost, but totally justly for him. He's just fought a war to drag her home, you know, and thousands, tens of thousands of people have died to bring her home. But he sees that as totally just, and it's full of machismo, isn't it? It's full of that. I've done all this good fighting, and you know, and been brilliant. Why haven't I got my prize? Where's my dessert? Where's my pudding? And it's quite good to see him slightly humbled, actually. And then I think in the next bit with Paul, that Paul and Eunice read, to see being treated badly, which he's not used to.
Right. And Paul, when you started with your Teucer, you came on, like, Teucer was already angry.
Yeah.
Right? So did you bring that anger to Teucer from the play itself, or were you bringing stuff you already knew about his character?
I suppose it was sort of, it's difficult to kind of, it's one of the big sort of interesting things with this play as a whole, it seems to me, from what Evie and Eunice and Richard have been saying as well, about it's so difficult to let go of what you know of the myth around it. Say when you're approaching something like Helen and Menelaos. But for me, with Teucer, I mean, he just seems like this ball of anger that's gonna really sort of shoot off in any direction. And actually then, when confronted with the person who he hates, even though he's got it wrong as to, you know, whether he should be hating her or not, is then sort of just fit to burst, really. And it seems to me that he's someone who just can't ever really let it go. And again, I think there's an element, something that Richard was saying about Menelaos, there's an element of sort of woe is me about all of this. All of these people who come on stage, it's like, oh, I've had the worst day. But actually I've had the worst 15, 20, whatever year, you know, yeah. I've had a really bad couple of decades.
Yeah.
And I think that there's, in a way, sort of, I suppose, Teucer is kind of, I suppose, representing the Achaeans as a whole a bit, but you can't play that as an actor. So actually, you know, I can't bear the weight of the army for that. It's actually just about me, and that Helen is responsible for every single. She's the key chain, isn't she? She's the key link in the chain that is then why everything has gone wrong for me. And I sort of just imagined him sort of on this boat, kind of going, I just want to get to Cyprus. Like, okay, I have to leave home. I just want to get to Cyprus. I'm in Egypt. Oh my God. Can't I at least even just turn up in the right exiled place?
So, I mean, I want to ask you guys all a thematic question before asking about some performative ones. And so one of the lines you read, Richard, I think, is Menelaos claims, when one is fallen, it is worse than one who is always that way, right? Now, I don't know if it's clear, but this is a Euripidean nod to tragic convention, right? So Aristotle's definition of a tragedy, part of it is that, you know, it starts off with someone who's in good position and then it gets worse, right? And a comedy is in you're a bad position and then life gets better, right? So the Odyssey and homecoming narratives are supposed to be comedic in structure because you start off low like Menelaos does in his rags, but you end up better, right? So I'm wondering what you think about his comment. So one question, would we agree? Is it worse for someone who's doing well to fall than it is for someone to be in a terrible condition all the time?
Who knows? Because unless you experience either end of it, you're never going to know. But from perception of having everything and then having nothing, I suppose the perception of that, if you're that person, is worse than continually having nothing, because you have to make the biggest change. Your life, the perception of your life changes more dramatically, I suppose. Whether it's true or not, I don't know.
Well, no, this dovetails with the, sort of that theme of the play about perception and reality, right? If the worst pain I've ever felt is stubbing my toe, then it doesn't matter if other people have had like objectively worse pain. It's still my worst pain. And I could
everyone who's coming on having a bad day, of course their bad day is worse than anybody else's bad day. This is their perception of their bad day, I suppose.
Evie, Eunice, any thoughts on tragedy and the very bad day?
Well, and it's always all relative, isn't it? Because you could, even personally, you can think, oh, I thought that was bad, but my God, I mean, today's even worse, you know. So, and they're different at different times of life as well.
Yeah. Evie?
Perhaps there's a loneliness with if you're someone who falls or is suddenly experiencing something that's fresh and new. Possibly the people that you surround yourself with generally are in perhaps a similar state to you, so finding yourself suddenly at odds with those around you, possibly. But yeah, like Richard says, impossible to know, I suppose.
And it feels so sorry, Richard.
I suppose, interestingly, at the minute, we're kind of all teetering on that drop, you know, of actually going, you know, in a space of 4 hours, my whole year's worth of work just disappeared, you know, on last Friday. And there are thousands of us like that in the country, and I'm sure across the world. So in actual fact, maybe we are about to experience. But
as well, we're all experiencing this. We have a similar situation, but we'll all experience it differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Almost the same. I mean, I can't recall anything where, you know, the world has almost been experiencing the same thing. I mean, we have to hope it might bring us together, you know, but we'll experience it so differently.
And so that's one of the reasons I asked this question, because I wanted to use it as a way for us to think about the context of the performance of plays. Because this theme would have been presented to thousands of people at once who have all been experiencing the trauma of the Peloponnesian War, the loss of an army, the uncertainty of the future, which makes this play almost painfully poignant right now. And when we read these plays, what is almost always the case is we just read them. We don't read them aloud. We don't think about the chorus, and we don't think about that critical element of the audience, right? So, I know this medium for talking about the play and performing it is strange, but will you guys talk a little bit about some of your visions of how having these words in different spaces and with different audiences might charge them or change them? What are some of your visions for staging the play?
I think actually the sense of alienation is quite useful in this. I feel like there is something in that you could take into performance. I feel like the distance, the fact, physical, and also the distancing. You're aware that it's not someone's face you're seeing. It's the image. It's the image that's been projected to you. I think there's something perhaps interesting in that. When you maybe were looking at how you'd show this image of Helen, that gets sent to Troy.
That's really amazing. Paul, have all of you done some direction? Paul, I know you've done lots of staging. How would you see this play working out in space?
Gosh, it's a really it's a really good question. It's something I was thinking something. Just want to pick up on what Evie was saying. Thinking something kind of along those lines as well. I was not amazed because I can't say brilliant, but amazed actually how well it kind of works in that sort of seeing it from sort of seeing Richard and Evie play their scene, and that sense of are you that person, and the way actually kind of it sort of this medium automatically kind of cuts between them, kind of like so it makes it quite sort of filmic, doesn't it, in that way? And there was something kind of very simple and very kind of effective about that. One of the things I think that I was really struck by, and of course I know it's sort of the idea, it's always sort of kind of drummed into you that it's true all the time in any play, but it's just how high stakes every single moment is within it. And it really feels like it really feels like the clock is ticking with it right from the beginning. And I think that, so I sort of feel that any staging with that, you just have to have that sense of urgency that everyone's coming on, sort of whether they've had this awful day or whether it's someone like the old woman. It's like, God, I need to get rid of you now, because if my boss finds me, then maybe I get taken out as well. And I think there's something about sort of the fast moving nature of this play that is really kind of fascinating. And I think it then leads to there's a lot of comedy within this, or a lot of humor within this, I suppose I should say.
Well, that's Euripides always has action-packed plays where he really presses that boundary of what we would typically see as drama and comedy, right? And so it's really hard to take, right? How do you play Helen, right? Is Helen someone who has a greater sense of irony? What about movement? So, I mean, have you guys done readings like this before in the small space like this? Is it something you're used to? Or did you find yourself wanting to move and gesture in ways you couldn't?
I found it quite hard not to, I don't know, maybe I was, but I found it quite hard to not move. And I think that's because of what Paul was just saying about the size of the stakes, that it kind of encourages you. And maybe what Abby was just saying as well about this isolation is that I kind of want to touch her, I kind of want to do that, and my hand appears in her screen whilst we're talking. But I find it quite hard not to move because of the stakes, because of how high the stakes are. But then I'm also just a fidgeter. But I've never done anything like this before. And in my head, I keep seeing this as quite a sparse space, but just with actually quite huge stakes and intention that would be having to happen. But the joy of this is that you have to hold it quite tight. That you're maybe forced to hold it quite particularly.
And there was something in your scene with Evie about the impossibility of touch, but then made it really challenging. It felt for you, Richard, that actually I can't test this out. You know, like, she looks like my wife. I think she might be my wife, but actually everything, you know, all the logic says she can't be. And I can't even actually kind of hold her and find out for certain.
And which in this medium, like Evie was saying, is really fascinating in that, you know, if you had 4 or 5 people on a blurry screen who kind of look the same, then who's to say that they're not the same, or that they're not? They're not like that you're not being catfished or something, or there's something really fascinating about that. And also these people are living in a world where Menelaus, quite after fighting for Helen and dragging her back and this shipwreck and everything, the messenger comes on and says, oh, she just disappeared. And he says, oh, right, okay. You know, what is that world? You know,
what I love about your catfishing comment is it echoes, right, what Lana said, that on the internet, you can be anybody, right? In the ancient world too, like they don't have DNA. You know, they have it, they just don't know what they have it. They don't have positive ID match. So after 10 years, how does anybody know who anybody is? One of the best moments of the Odyssey is when Odysseus meets Telemachus and says, hey, I'm Odysseus. Telemachus says, no, you're not, you're a god. And Odysseus then says, no other Odysseus will ever come home to you.
Oh.
Right? It was just like, what? Like no other Odysseus? Like, how do we even know? And so, you know, again, I think one of the things we miss because of the staging is, what does Menelaus look like to Helen? Right? I mean, does she want him to be there?
She seems to be afraid of him to start with. I don't know. She says she's being...
Definitely. And in terms of the you know, the state of mind of trying to stay safe, the level of stress that she must have been under for 10 years, trying to stay, you know, chaste and avoiding danger at the same time as worrying about the deaths or you know, potential deaths of her brothers.
Right. I mean,
suddenly seeing a man that she doesn't presumably recognize for a while, or he's familiar but he doesn't, you know, 10 years have passed and it's going to look very different.
Euripides, I think, of the ancient tragedians, is the most sensitive to this type of a woman's perspective, right? Of that tightrope that needs to be walked. In, you know, in Helen's traditional story in Troy, after Paris died, she got married off to his brother Deiphobus because it was just so dangerous that she be out alone, that she not be connected or tamed in some way. And even, you know, there's a famous vase image of Menelaus being reunited with her at the moment where he decides whether or not he's going to kill her. Right? And it's this powerful thing, right? That famous line, you know, that, what is it? That men are always afraid that women will make fun of them, and women are afraid that men will kill them, right? And so it's really a powerful moment, and the other tragedians, I don't think, get into that perspective as well. Don't see Don. I know that got a little heavy there. Now, you guys haven't read this play before. Was this your first engagement with it?
Yes, absolutely.
So reading it now in this time, what's a takeaway that each of you have? If someone said, why read Helen now? What would you say to them? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah. That we're all being questioned of who we are, not even us questioning who am I, but who are we and who are we in the world today? You know, and what is the world today? You know, whose tomb is this? Whose house is this? Who does live here? You know,
that idea as well, I think, of being isolated when you're aware that there is a hive of frenetic and terrifying activity happening that you're not privy to, but you know, your life is completely defined by it. The fact that, you know, we're all spending days at home and trying to move around as little as possible, knowing that there are people out there, yeah, who are kind of trying to save lives.
And it's both, you know, it's a tremendous loss of agency, right?
Yeah.
It's just like as well that it's a play, it's about stolen identity. She's had her, the Eidolon is actually, has copied her all of her social media profiles, and she's sort of taken all of her friends and ruined her
bank account
and everything, and
it's
her identity and totally trashed it as well.
Richard?
I just wanted to ask a question, actually. Does Helen make her double, or does her double appear? Does that make sense? Does Helen decide that she'll have a double?
So in the story, the gods decide it, and Hermes makes it and delivers it, or Hephaestus. Yeah.
Okay, great.
She's completely left out of it. Right? Things just happen.
But there is also, so maybe as well, there's this idea of, I don't know, people above us making decisions to, I don't know, to appease a perception of us. There's loads of stuff about perception, isn't it? Of, you know, governments deciding what they're going to do with us.
Right.
And us not actually having a voice in it.
And this is very deeply connected to the original context of the play, in which there are lots, you know, the war drags on for so long. And how many people in Athens died, as opposed to how many people were actually making the decisions that led to their deaths.
Yeah, it is quite fascinating. And this idea of, that you were saying about only Odysseus would come home to you, and these two people reconnecting and stuff. I know it goes off tangent a little bit, but it's wonderful at the end of Pericles when they all meet, and none of them can quite get over the fact that they are who they are, and it takes them all ages to really imprint on each other, these two are. But there's something fascinating about, how do you prove to somebody who you really are?
Yeah. So, you know, this is a central theme of the Odyssey. And what the Odyssey says is you do it by telling stories from when you were together before and confirming your identity with external signs.
Yeah.
You know? So Lana asked a question if there are other doppelgangers like this in Greek myth. The one who jumps to mind for me is Zeus puts on the body of Amphitryon on the night that Heracles is conceived. So there are other scenes like that, but I can't think of another place where it's a woman. Right, and that has a lot to do with Helen. So I've been asking lots of questions. Richard, thanks for pushing us to somebody else asking questions. Does anybody else have a question about the play or about any of the readings, or have any thoughts you want to share?
No, I'm fine actually. It was very interesting. It was lovely just watching it all happen. You know, it's great. And how it works. The system works.
This question of identity is really interesting, the way that it interacts with current events. I mean, we're all trying to figure out, am I a safe person to be around?
Yeah.
And how can I know that? And if I am, how can I prove that? Is there a test I can take, for example?
Well, and it really connects to what happens in the next century, which is there's a crisis in philosophy at the time between sort of rhetoric and idealist philosophy. Like, how do we know what's true and how do we agree, right? And there's this one school of thought that says the only access to the truth we have is through our senses. And later on, you get with someone like Plato, the argument that no, there's something real, but we can't get to it through our senses. And so Euripides is really entering right into this debate, 30 years before Plato wrote the Republic, and forcing us to think about this contrast between a thing that says it's the thing and the real thing itself. And then I think the real sort of double twist in the Helen is that at the end, she ends up being every bit as dangerous as everyone claimed she was when she was the Eidolon, right? She's the one who drives the plan, who executes it, who gets away with everything. And so I think we're, as an audience, I think left in a really strange place at the end vis-a-vis like, who is Helen and what should we think of her?
Yes, I really would like to know the reaction of the audience in 412, because she has nothing to do with the Helen we have in the Iliad. And the people were used to the Helen in the Iliad and in that play.
Yeah, so we have one bit of evidence, and that's that in the next year, Aristophanes wrote a play called the Thesmophoria Zeusai, where he makes fun of Euripides putting mini Helens on the stage. He actually quotes some of the lines from the Helen and makes them sort of ridiculous. And part of it is because Helen is Spartan, right? She's from Sparta, and it's easy I think it's easy picking for Aristophanes to make her an enemy, right? And so we have to think, like, what does it mean in Athens during the Peloponnesian War to have an epic about fighting for a Spartan woman, right? So I think Aristophanes finds that and he pulls it out and sort of maximizes it. But other than that, we don't know. We do have sort of the history of reception, which is that not many people read this play, but it did survive. So enough people did. Any other thoughts or questions? No? Yeah, Sarah?
So this is a question also for the actors, but then perhaps also for Joel, in terms of this performance space, which is limited. Although, Paul, I noticed when you came on as the messenger, you disappeared and then came on, which was kind of fun. And so I wonder if there might be ways that you can think about, perhaps for future performance, ways of kind of shaping it a little. These are several questions, really, so I'm rambling. I was thinking also about radio performance, for example, where you have no visuals whatsoever. Here you've actually got some visuals, and does that being able to see each other as you're performing the lines to each other, does that make a difference, at least compared to maybe audio only? And then thinking also about the way a performance would have been staged in Athens, compared to how you might stage it if you had a proper performance space, in terms of fairly limited props and staging and so on, perhaps a mask, but quite different from having that sort of visual of actual facial expression. So they're just sort of performance questions I was thinking about, as I was watching you perform these things. Any reactions, anybody?
My staging instinct would say that if I was going to do this at a theatre, I'd probably do it as sparse as the original, just with a massive gate, or whatever's needed, really, which is I think all it asks for, because all it's asking for actually is people in a situation, like in a space that they're not used to, or that they're used to, but it's asking for people in an arena, like squeezed between two places, squeezed between the sea and the gate and wherever they've come from, maybe. With radio, we'd see each other anyway, because we'd probably record at the same time.
Oh, duh! I was thinking like an audience member, wasn't I?
No, of course, but but you wouldn't see us, so you wouldn't know what we looked like. So then your imagination, you get more freedom of imagination.
As they always say with radio, the pictures are so much better from an audience perspective.
My grandma said I had a great face for radio. Rude, I thought, but sure.
I think with radio as well, like you say, Richard, we'd actually be able to make eye contact. I think the thing that is so odd about these video calls is that when you're looking at the person speaking, your eyes kind of, whereas here I'm staring into a camera, which doesn't, so that's definitely a kind of an odd separation in this.
And it's working out where to put the script. I mean, I had mine, because it wasn't on the screen, it was on paper. And so actually it's much better if you're reading it off the screen, because then you're looking at, as opposed to down there and up, down there and up. Yeah.
My script covered everything, so I couldn't see anyone when I was doing my thing.
I know.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
You didn't miss anything, Richard. So I think on a staging point of view as well, I agree with you, Richard. I think I kind of, you have a big gate, whatever. But I also really like the idea that the tomb is there. Yeah. I think it's such a great. I mean, just a tomb is a great space for you to play with, because it's something that you really kind of respect. It means something to you, what your relationship to the person who's in that tomb, but it's also then something that is just constantly reminding you of what happens when it goes wrong. And I think that's kind of really useful staging, sort of just thing to have on
And a particular reverence that you might give to the ground and the space around that tomb as well. Like, how many arguments do you get into? How improper are you in that sacred space?
Yeah. Exactly.
What I really like about the simplicity of it, that I think works in this venue, is that, you know, ancient tragedy was about the words, right? And the spectacle. I mean, when we perform it now, we don't usually have the spectacle. We don't have 50-person choruses in garish costumes singing as if we're in a Bollywood film, right? That's just not our theatrical convention. What I was really impressed with all these readings you guys put together in 12 hours is you breathed life back into the words without stage directions, with only the words themselves. And you really, like, you brought characters out of long dead languages. And so that's something that I think that this medium really accentuates, is the skill of an actor as as what the Greeks would call a hermeneus, right? As someone who translates from one realm to another. And I feel like each of you did it in a different way. And so I think that, you know, there's definitely space to keep doing that, but I don't know if I'd want to add costumes at this point, right? I think we're probably at like a natural ending point. Can everybody just go around and so just give one closing comment or thought about the experience? And we'll start with Keith.
Well, I guess it's about space again, picking up on Richard, your comment about the tomb, I think it was, or I'm sorry if I forget who it was. It's the tomb of Proteus, and this is the guy who, in another version of the story, changed form, from form to form, as he was being held by Menelaos in a certain scene. And so this idea of identity again, and who one really is just highlighted even geographically by the tomb being there the whole time. And I was also thinking, what would it take to rewrite some of these plays specifically for this virtual space where everyone is in a window looking down? What would it mean for Helen and Menelaos to reunite? Is it just that Menelaos can be sure that it's really Helen in that window over there? Is that enough? I don't know. Just what are the possibilities? Curious to see if that plays out at all in future iterations of this.
Zoe, did you want to say anything? You've been watching along.
What to say? I so enjoyed it, every bit of it, in so many ways, actually. To be able to experience the play like that was great. I loved the choices of scene. I could actually, it did transport me and carry me through a process, and it really is very, very stimulating. So a big thank you, really, to make this possible. Thoughts, if I may say, just any kind of a parting thought or a concluding thought. Perhaps this just appeals to me, the one statement that we made earlier, the one that when one is fall, this moment of experiencing the fall, which is the experience of the play and the immediacy of the reading, in contrast, or just juxtaposed with the memory of it, or kind of a place where you kind of know of the affliction, but you kind of see it from a distance. I think that to me, it's a very powerful concept. And I think that you were so right, Joel, in kind of bringing in that point, like making a reference to the audience, because for me, I was the audience, okay? So I was experiencing that in that way, and I could, experience the moment of falling, the moment of the questions, the moment of this distancing and such, and making sense of it, just kind of a condition that's familiar to me, but the trauma is a bit removed. So I have an opportunity to reprocess in a more healthy way. So to me, the whole experience was valuable, and just a big thank you on behalf of an audience member. So,
Paul? What are your thoughts?
Well, my thought was simply to say how much I've really enjoyed this. It's been really, really great, and so thank you to everyone who's been involved. And I just love it when these plays are read out loud. And picking up on what you were saying, and it's just, I'll choose one moment where it's just something just really pinged out, which was in that opening speech, and it's the moment when Helen finally says her name.
Yeah.
And when I read it in my head, you sort of note it, but go, oh, fine. But wow, it lands incredibly. It has such impact and power when you then hear it. And it was just really wonderful to hear that, and to hear all of the things, and to be involved in this. So,
thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, I think that was fabulous. It is, as you were saying earlier, quite a different experience reading something from the page and witnessing it being performed. And then also to have this framework for discussion and for focusing on certain passages and talking about the themes. I've learned a huge amount, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think you're all fabulous. It's been great.
Thank you, Sarah. Janet?
I really enjoyed it, seeing actors and hearing you. And I have to put your costumes on my mind, and I had another level of imagination is there. It was very pleasant. And with the intro passages and more discussions, not discussions, but more introductions by Joel made the play whole. So I understood from the beginning to the end, it's a happy ending, Helen.
Richard?
That was fun. That's it.
Good.
Thank you. It was fun. I haven't done any like reading out loud for a while. Like, I mean, I have, obviously, but you know what I mean? It was nice. It was good. Thank you.
Lana?
I've been having fun with this idea of rewritings, or, you know, these different visions of ways that it could take. And I've been envisioning it as an absurdist comedy, just, you know, how we could push that element of it even further. And I just like the irony that the Eidolon was in a cave. Like, I was thinking about Plato's cave, for instance, and it's just this was so delightful. This was not a play that I've ever read or knew anything about until yesterday, and it's been fun to see it come alive and then think through all these different pieces of it. So thanks so much.
I like the absurdist take, because we just recently started watching The Marvelous Miss Maisel.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of Helen as Maisel, right?
Oh my goodness, that's a fun thought experiment.
Eunice?
Well, how much it works, I think, is so fabulous. And that, you know, here we are all apart, and yet it brings us all together, you know. So I think it's great. I think it works really well.
Evie?
Yeah, very much the same. It's so lovely that during a time when, you know, we're not seeing people in real life, it's just amazing to be connected to people all around the world. It's lovely. It's so lovely to read, and was just fascinating to hear your thoughts and about the play. Yeah, and its context. I loved it. So thank you.
I want to, you know, before we close, thank Paul for the idea and give him some recognition. So there's this, people hear me, my students will recognize this. My favorite metaphor for creative production in the ancient world comes from Plato's Ion. And he says that inspiration is like a magnet, and that the poet is a piece of metal stuck to it. And then the performer is stuck to that. And then the audience is stuck to that. So it's like a chain of inspiration that goes one to the other. And what we often fail to understand is that we miss one of those links when we take the performer as an interpreter out of the equation, right? Because Homer was recited by someone in the ancient world. It was read aloud by people. And these plays had actors and directors and singers as intermediaries. So I want to thank you all for bringing this alive more for me today, and Paul for having a pretty smart idea.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody. And I guess we're going to do this again soon.
Yeah, yes. Thank you.